Hello guys, BJ the Brave here, back with another deck guide for you, and today we're going to be focusing on the Necrons, and specifically Imotekh. Now, it's been a long while since I did a Imotekh deck guide, and also we did, of course, get some buffs to the Necrons, not this in this season's bounce patch, but the previous one, and I never really did anything with that, so I wanted to bring you guys kind of an update on an Imotekh build. I believe there's quite a few ways you can play Imotekh right now. Works pretty well with Scarabs, particularly with Immortal Pride, making the Warlord power cheaper. It works quite well as a sort of more... one of my Alliance teammates, shout out to Balduco, he plays a slightly more sort of tempo version of Imotekh, making use of things like Implacable Conqueror, and dropping some of the control tools, but rather just curving out and tempoing into that Tomb World Wincom. Now, the version I have got for you today, I'm calling Pride Control. It is actually based around outgrinding your opponent and outlasting your opponent. It's a sort of, it's got those control tools, those old school control tools built into it, and that's my kind of deck really. But it's certainly my kind of Imotekh build. Necrons actually were the first ever faction that I collected. First premium campaign. My first legendary card ever was Tomb World. I just read that and I thought this sounds really cool, and so yeah. I wanted to bring an update to this archetype, and I believe some of the changes do help with that. So let's dive on in, look at the deck, and then we'll jump into a few games. So we are running Imotekh, and as we know, he's the 40 health Warlord, making him survivable. And every time he plays Lord of the Storm, which does 1 ping, he does actually heal 1 as well. Now, because this is Pride Control, let's talk about Immortal Pride. We've got 2 copies of this. And it says, give armor 1 to all of your units. For the rest of this battle, your Warlord's talent costs 1. Now, the armor 1, if you can get that, is good. But it's not the kind of... it's not the main reason why we're playing it. As in the armor 1 on the units. We obviously want the armor on Imotekh, because if we're playing a grindy control build, then that armor's going to help him survive. The other part to that is that when the talent costs 1 less, we actually got the buff recently that if the target dies from the 1 ping, that you then get another copy. So if this thing only costs 1 energy to cast, then you can essentially string out multiple copies of Lords of the Storm. And when you're combining that with things like, Damage Hexmark or things like Hexmark Destroyer, that can create some pretty powerful, or even just Technomancer, right, for the Resurrection. That can create some pretty powerful chains, if you like, combos. So, believe it or not, I have actually refined this deck a bit and played quite a bit with it, and when you first look at this deck, you're probably going to think, oh, is it refined because there's quite a few 1-drops in there? Well, there are, but some of those are legendaries, like we've got the Tomb World for the big finish, we've got the Necron Lord. Notice we don't run Oberon in this deck because we're not running the Implacable Conqueror, so there's no way of making him cheaper, and I don't really want to spend the 9 energy putting him out there to be hard removaled. We do run a single copy of Methodical Destruction. I think 2 is probably too many, but I do still think when you're doing this kind of grindy approach where you're going to see most of your deck, that having 1 guaranteed hard removal in there is actually still important when you're playing this sort of control type of build. We got the Locust Lords, another one of the one-offs. We got the Conquering Tyrant as a one-off. Again, if we're playing the long game, having the heal, but also getting that +2 melee combos really nicely with everything we just said about the hero power, because that means now you can deal 4 damage to a 5 health unit, for example, and you're just more likely to get something down to 1 health to be able to set up those pings. And in addition, it's really good against things like Orkz and Chaos, those things that go big on the melee damage. Do they want to suddenly trade in and try and beat you down when your Warlord has got 4 health? 4 attack, which is hitting them back for that. So Conquering Tyrant is as much a deterrent as well. Now the other one-offs, we've got a damage hex mark because we don't really want two of these because this is very much a timing piece, right? It's not a card you just play out on E5 as a tempo. You actually want to time it right where it's going to do the most, either effective trades or even be a win con. It's quite possible to play this down and play 3 spells and it just does 15 damage to enemy face, right? So that's what I mean by timing. Chronomancer's obviously a legendary. You know, one thing I really overlooked about this card in the recent change is that at the end of your turn, reanimate a friendly remnant. That's such a good ability. That's such a good ability. Not having to synergize an artifice to get a resurrection. You literally just, you've got a remnant, you just drop this guy down, and at the end of the turn it automatically reanimates. Really, really think this card's in a good place now. It's taken a long time. Chronomancer is one of those legendaries that's gone through so many tweaks and they've never really got it right, but I do think it's in a really good place right now. I think it's a really nice card, a well-balanced card, and but still strong. Exactly where it needs to be as a legendary 5-drop in the Necrons. Really love this card now. Now the other one is the Psychomancer. I started with 2, then I completely dropped them, and then I put 1 back in. So I do think, again, in this kind of stall, kind of control grindy approach, that, you know, having 1 is good because it's an okay tempo play on E4, but I'd say it's almost unnecessary a lot of the time. Against most decks, I mean some decks it's not, but most decks it's a little bit unnecessary to like tempo this out and just stun the enemy warlord. It's like, okay, great, but it's not doing that much to kind of change the dynamic of the game. Whereas if you've got 1 copy and say it gets into that late game and things, when the game starts to get more complex, having that timely stun on an important piece can be massive. So that's ultimately why I ended up putting 1 back in. And I also like if it's, you know, it's only 4, right? So it plays into a like low curve. Now the other one-ofs in the deck, we've got Undying Legions, which is legendary. You could get away with not playing this. I have considered just not running it. I think, you know, it's still a very effective deck without this card, but I feel like this is a good deck for it because, again, if we're playing a grindy going long, then it is a big difference when our opponent's trying to remove remnants when they have to basically put 2 attacks into a remnant as opposed to 1 to get rid of it. And for only 3 energy, you can kind of weave it in quite nicely. And again, we're not playing Implacable Conqueror. You might be thinking, why are we not doing that? Well, we don't have too much that's like majorly expensive needing the buff. And also, we're going to be taking turns off for things like Conquering and things like Immortal Pride. So we can't be taking E5 off and then taking E6 off as well. We also have Ophidian Destroyer. This card is an absolute S-tier powerhouse now. Like, you can have games where you get this guy, especially if you're going second, you play this card down on 3, and you play the card that says the next Mimir or whatever it's called. So the next card that you play, the next stratagem you play is -1 discount. It isn't the next card this turn. So you can just play this on E3, play that card out, this guy goes invisible, and they just keeping this guy invisible for like 5-6 turns. It is really, really powerful, and if your opponent doesn't have those kind of like anti-stealth tools, then there's not a lot they can do, quite honestly. It's really, really good. That regen too is, whew, that really is something. Now, the other one-of in here is the damage plasma sight, and I know some people don't like running it in a Tomb World deck, but the way I look at it is, if I play Tomb World and I get 5 units, I'm looking at this deck, I could pick almost any unit. Like, Psychomancer's a bad one. But almost every other unit is good that it's possible to get back with Tomb World. And if one of those 5 is the damage plasma sight, I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with it. You know, it's probably late game, my health's probably lower, and being able to heal is actually not, it's not even bad getting this in Tomb World. It would be bad if you were trying to do a Force Tomb World where you only had like 3 units coming back and this was 1. Maybe that would be bad. But generally speaking, I think I don't think that Tomb World is a deterrent from having 1 copy. Maybe having 2 copies, maybe. Because if you got 2 of these back in a Tomb World, that would be bad. But getting 1 of them back, I actually don't even think is bad. And I actually think this card really helps us with our game plan of trying to survive deep into the late game. So this card is in. Other one-drops that we run, one-ofs that we run, are in the 1E stratagems, right? So we've got one Extermination Protocol, one Hypological Strategist, and one Reconstruction Protocol. The thing about these cards is that they're all kind of, when you try and work out like which one's better, you end up going round in circles because they're all better in certain situations, right? Like, and when you know, obviously if you need the removal, if you're looking for a value chain but you've nothing needing to affect the board right now, you just need to trigger artifice, then Hypological Strategist might be better. And that time where, you know, you attack with a Scorpek Destroyer and then it dies and then you can just guarantee get it back, you know, those types of turns, that's where Recon is better. So they're all better than the others in certain situations. And so what we're trying to do with this type of deck, this kind of like long grindy control deck, it's all about having tools. So it's all about having and selecting the right tool for the right situation. That basically sums up a control deck. And so rather than try and like lose a tool in order to have that kind of more guaranteed consistent draw on one of the other tools, I've gone for one of each, because then you know, I know that I've always got something in there to dig for. Following that logic, I actually wouldn't mind running the one card I'd really love to try is like the Dimensional Corridor. I think this card could be really, really good in this deck for that same thing that I just said, like being able to dig and find the right tool. I think it would fit very, very well. I'm just not sure what I'd drop. Maybe the Conquering Tyrant could be something that you could drop if you find that you don't need the heal, and potentially that could be one. But otherwise, I'm really struggling to figure out what I would drop for it. So as I said, a lot of one drops. Let's look at the rest of the deck with the two ofs. Sorry, we've obviously got two Technomancers, Tomb Blades, and the Praetorians. This kind of trio, these 9 cards, are a pretty staple in pretty much every Imotekh, if not Necron build out there. All lovely synergies with one another. And then we run Double Curse. Now, this might be one that surprises you. It's gone through a lot of nerfs over the months, and therefore a lot of people started dropping it. But I think that in this control-esque type of build, as opposed to the tempo version, I actually do think the curse is still very, very necessary. And you know, especially if we're only going to run like one methodical destruction, it helps us melt. Actually, it helps us melt like mid-range boards. You know, there's a lot of Tau at the minute, for example, and Curse of Pharaon can be really good against those battle suits, those sort of mid-range health type of units. And it can also help against, you know, things like Chaos and stuff. It's not as great against armor, though. That's one thing to say. But I still find that it's actually a necessary card, and it has good synergies. Don't forget, with the fact that we can now play a cheaper ping card from Lord of the Storm. Obviously, if we can pay 1 to ping, but then it's on a cursed unit, it's going to do 3 damage per turn, which means we get our ping back again. So Curse actually really synergizes well with that buff to the Warlord. What else have we got? We got the double Scorpek Destroyer, because, you know, why would you not? It's one of the best flankers in the Necrons. Again, remembering that sometimes late in the game this can be an absolute beast when combined with Technomancer, so this is another almost hard removal, right? You can play Scorpek, hits for 5, then you ping it with your Warlord power, 6 you've done, Scorpek stands back up and hits for another 5. You know, that's like 11 damage. Even against an armoured unit, that's, what, 9 damage, I think. So it's Scorpek is very good both in the early and the late game. We do run double inescapable retributions. Again, we are running the mere defensive cards, so sometimes we can play this on 4. And for me, it wins out over something like the Doom Scythe, because we're not... I think the Doom Scythe's sometimes better when you're discounting your cards with the Implacable Conqueror. Whereas I think when you're not running that, I think this card's better. It also has good synergy when you've got all the resurrections that we've got in here from things like the Necron Lords resurrection, and obviously the Technomancers and stuff. So I do really like the inescapable retribution. And then we have also got double Hexmark, and this card is still a star of the show. I still maintain that I don't know whether changing their thing to deal 1 damage to 4 random enemies than the whole board was necessary. But either way, like the role hasn't changed. The role that this card's playing is the same it's always been. It's that really great kind of getting into the late game, really great kind of AoE, chipping away. It's what I love about it as well is a lot of AoEs. It says, you know, do 3 damage to the board or do 2 to 3 damage to the board, which is even worse because you just don't know what you're going to get. With this guy, it's like it does 1 every time you play a spell. So you can really kind of manipulate and control the board and like how much damage do I need? Where do I need the damage? It's in that sense it's a perfect control tool because when you play the control deck, you have to be in control. You don't want RNG. That's not control. So in a way, it's a perfect control tool, and it's one of these cards that's really stood the test of time for Necrons. It's definitely one of the best cards in the faction, and it's pivotal in a deck like this. It really does help turn around boards. You'll see in some of the games later. You can be behind, and then you play some combo with this, and you come straight back into the game. So. Now, the Immortal Pride, we've already talked about. This is pivotal to Pride control, right? Getting that Lord of the Storm nice and cheap. Sometimes we get to play 2 of them, and meaning that Imotech's got 2 armor, which at that stage, every time you play, this is what makes it so good, is that every time you play Lord of the Storm, not only are you getting +1 health, but if you're on a 2 armored unit, that's 3 damage your opponent has to, 3 extra damage your opponent has to do just to get you back to where you were. So that's a phenomenal and spiraling ability, right? Like the benefits from that can be exponential. So that is the deck, guys. You know, we want to get that Immortal Pride out. We want to start getting the synergies with the cheap pings, and ultimately we want to get our cool beefy units onto the board and get them all back again with Tomb World. One card we haven't talked about is the Locust Lord. Locust Lord is very good. Your opponent will want to not only destroy this but get rid of the Remnant. But of course, bagging that Resurrection Orb I think is such a great, it's a so absolutely brilliant backlash ability to bag another legendary card. Truly love this card, and of course if you have played Undying Legions before you play the Locust Lord, that's a real problem for your opponent. That card, it's a real problem. Not only have they got to kill the 6 health unit, but they've then got to attack twice to clear the remnants. So you've got to think, if you're going second, you're going to probably take the Mimir. Shall we see what that card? I'm so bad when I'm doing these deck guides. I'm so bad at talking about. Why doesn't it actually show? Why doesn't it actually show them on here though? That's what I don't get. Huh. Why does it not show the specials? What am I missing? This is why I find it hard to talk about, because I actually don't know why I can't get them up on the thing. We're going down a rabbit hole here, guys. Look, if we go Necrons, here we go. I don't know why I have to come out of the deck to see these. So Divination Menhir, that's what it's called. Menhir, I was calling it Mamir or something. Menhir, your next stratagem costs 1. This is the one I'll normally go for on the defensive cards. Sometimes on the offense, Earthquake can be good, because again, Earthquake can help us to really stall games out, so I quite like that. And there are times where playing things like the Awakened Obelisk or the Resurrection Vault can be good as well. But personally, I tend to go with this because we do have the Pride, we have the thingy, the Conquering Tyrant, and we also have those inescapable retributions to get 2 Tomb Blades on the board, which we could do on E4. And it's the fact that we can play this on 3 with the legendary that's busted, that goes into stealth, and don't need to play the benefit in the same turn from Menhir. So I think this is a very key defense card for this deck, and it definitely gets much better when you unlock Divination Menhir for sure. So if we're going second, we really want to be looking for combinations with that, and this is your main one. You really want this guy in your opening hand if possible. I think your win rate will go through the roof when you start with this guy in your opening hand, to be honest, and you want to try and protect him early game. Other than that, Of course, you want your Tomb Blades. Of course, you want your Technomancer, your Praetorian, potentially your Extermination Protocol if you are up against like an aggro deck or something like Chaos where they can play a Noise Marine down and you really need to deal with it. Extermination Protocol is very good there. In addition, if you need stall early, if they're going to really come at you quick with a tempo deck, Psychomancer can be really good. And of course, Scorpek Destroyer as well. I would say that everything else you are pretty much throw. Oh, Undying Legions you keep as well. But everything else you pretty much throw. The only exception would be, again, if we're going second and we have Divination main here, then we would be obviously thinking about our how we benefit that. Like, which is the big spell? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? Or is it going to be this? And speaking of this, I would say this is the one exception to the early curve units that we just talked about where I would actually keep this. I would always keep the Immortal Pride. Maybe if we're going first, maybe if we're going first, we've only got 3 cards and we're playing against an aggro deck, maybe I wouldn't, I don't know. But like 8 times out of 10, I think you would keep this in your opening hand. So that is the deck, guys. With that said, let's now show off some gameplay. Okay, so first off, we are playing up against Commander of Mesos. So you can see here we are going first, so no Divination men here. So we're only going to keep the Tomb Blade here for that early curve. Technomancer's a nice find. He plays the Solar Eclipse, so once something is, once a skull is earned, we will actually reduce the cost of the strat in hand. That's really, really good for us. So definitely a good choice on our behalf. So I actually did bash and heal, and Mesos not too big of an aggro deck, so I don't mind doing that. If it was against Orkz, I probably wouldn't even bash, I'd probably just hit. So we just go nice and steady, and now he plays the Battlesuit. And he plays the Tide Wall for a drone as well. So here we're actually going to just focus on getting rid of the drone. I did think about several ways of doing this, and in the end I decided on let's just keep the Tomb Blade as healthy as possible, force him to trade there, and we'll deal with that next turn. So the dynamic offensive is obviously great for him to have early, but it does mean that he doesn't build the board too fast in this turn. And this is a great example where the Lord of the Storm comes into play, right? Because we've got 5 energy, and you know, if we want, we can just play out the Lord of the Storm, ping this, and then ping the other one, and it's kind of a job done. So down comes the broadside battlesuit. Of course, this unit has long range, so it's really important to attack this. And we draw the Locust Lord. We had a few options and ways we could play this, but we actually decided to go with a proactive drop and say, do you know what, if I get rid of your long range, I've actually got the better unit there, although he does have the new Inspired by Greatness, and that helps him massively. Really nice target, by the way, the broadside for Inspired by Greatness. It's something that I've not tested enough, that actually. So that Resurrection Orb is pocketed. And what happened there is I actually made a misplay because I thought I could attack the broadside, but because of the Destroyer rule which says if you can kill a unit you must, I actually miscalculated that turn. So this was a bit of an opportunity for our opponent. See if they can capitalize on the mistake. Now obviously this was one of the suits that got flank. So we're not really recovered too well since we made that mistake. However, what this does set up when you see this board here now, where he's kind of chipped away to gain the kind of tempo advantage in the trades, this is where Hexmark really does work. So the hyperlogical is a really nice setup. This is going to get a unit down onto 1, and then we can Lord of the Storm to hit the one that's got 2 health, and that'll guarantee clear the board. So such a nice demonstration there of how the Hexmark really helps this deck. And down comes the big guy. Interesting, we could have gone down the curse route. There's a few ways we could have played that. But I suppose this way does give us a bigger board, right? So we reach overtime, and he decides to use the coordinated just to get rid of the Resurrector. Like, that is not how he wants to be using that, but he does have the Lone Spear, so I guess with what he had in hand it wasn't too bad, because he knows he can't clear the Remnant, so that's why it was so important for him to clear this. But now you see that Resurrection Orb that we bagged earlier, these are the turns where you're really looking for that value. So we attack first, then we use the Res Orb, and we've still got 8 energy left. And the thing is here, we can use Chronomancer's new ability. We don't go for the Chrono. Okay, I think the... Interesting. We could have resurrected that as well, but I guess we just figured, you know what, we don't really need to do that. I'm not sure about that turn. I think potentially we could have played that turn a bit differently. I felt like it was a good Chrono turn, to be honest. He's really been throwing these at us, hasn't he? I think that's the last one. And there's 5 available in the Tomb World now as well. So we kill off the Lone Spear, and of course, all we got to do is play one more spell, and then we get our Tomb Blade back again. Never feels that good when you use a reanimate one when you've already got the Technomancer down. You'd rather it be a different spell, but sometimes you've just got to, you know, you just got to do it. Like, even though it doesn't always feel optimal, it's the right thing to do. Now he gets a coordinated engagement off that he does want. This is very much how he wants to be using that card, and he's able to kill the Necron Lord. But because of the flanker, he can't actually get to finish off the Remnant, and with the Technomancer still standing, that's a problem for him. And the second Hexmark comes down. If you ever get a board state where you get double Hexmark, especially when you can play something like Curse, that is a devastating turn. That's a 6 AoE clear just from the Curse, right? I think what we should have done here is we should have used Lord of the Storm on Omesos, but I think we hit that, yeah. So we missed 1 damage on Omesos here, but honestly, it really doesn't matter at this stage. We're able to clear the board nice and easy. You can see the extermination protocol as well. And, you know, that was an example where extermination protocol, we'd have rather have that been hyperlogical, wouldn't we? We'd have rather it been reconstitution, one of the other two. So, you know, you can look at that game and say we'd swap that out. But then in other games, having the 2 damage would have been important. So there we go, guys. I thought that was quite a nice game. It really did show off quite a lot of the different elements of this deck that we talked about in the beginning. If you've not heard that bit, go back and watch the deck tech. On to the next one.
Reshape this galaxy into a place of order and unity.
So some Orkz. Or to storm it up. One of the arguments for still hitting with Imotekh even against Orkz is that they do have heal themselves and they do have armor. So if you think that they might be playing the armor, it's quite good to get some damage on before the armor comes down. So, obviously we could have played the Praetorian, but we actually kind of see the opportunity there to just go ahead and, you know, his bow's not too threatening. Just go ahead and get the Undying Legions out now. Just really maximise the value of that in this game. So this is why I wanted to show you this game, because, you know, it's an example of when you do have Undying Legions in your opening hand. And one thing to bear in mind about Undying Legions, and why I think it's particularly relevant in this type of deck, is that, remember, not only does he obviously have to attack your Remnant an extra time to get rid of it, but the whole master plan, really, for us, is to just grind the game out and last. And so every one of those extra attacks isn't hitting us in the face and getting rid of our health. So even whether he clears the Remnants or not, that's kind of the point. Now, we actually took 4 damage there. Very passive turn by us. He plays double bomb squig. And I do remember thinking his hand had got a little bit awkward. So and we're down to 24 already. So we kill one, and the explosion kills the other one. And we're happy we put the armor down. So we're only taking 1 ping per turn. Now we're only taking 2 from the grot bomb. But even still, right, we are getting a bit low, and we're still not established on board. So another trade that doesn't really get us back on the board, but we do get to heal 1. Hits us in the face. So we actually don't attack here. Ah, okay. Mucking about. So we got 3 things in the Tomb World at the minute. Now, sometimes it is correct, like, to just play an early Tomb World. Like, don't only play it when you've got 5 in there. You know, sometimes it is correct. But I think right now we're okay. So we know we're going to take like 1 to 2 damage on here, but kind of figured that we've got to get rid of it. A bit unlucky that everything keeps hitting us in the face on the backlash, the RNG backlashes. So he goes ahead and plays his 2nd Squig Hog Boys now. That's a really nasty trade for us, right? Like he's benefiting a lot from that. But this is remnant that he cannot get rid of. And look what we've got in hand.
Locating target for annihilation.
So I think part of the thinking here is that we obviously know we've got Tomb World in hand. So, you know, having units like these two, like, you know, them dying is not the worst thing, right? Because we get them back then in the Tomb World. And we are running out of health, and look, he's really going for it. So I am assuming with that play that he has got, yeah, another one. Look, he's got a lot of face damage from hand. So we're down to 9, and we've really got to think about our health here. And where does the Scorch hit as well? Scorch hits in the face. That armor really doing some work for us. So we heal. But now this guy stands up, and obviously we have got another 2 spells at least that we can do here. Double pings from the destroyers plus an attack from the Hexmark, and then with the reconstitution, that is enough to turn it round. So what you're seeing there as well is that this deck can have that reach. Remember we talked about having one-offs with cards like this? I mean, this is the kind of reach potential that it provides us with. And it's not uncommon to be able to be surviving, and then suddenly do like 18, 20 burst damage, which is quite a new thing with Necrons. And that's one of the things that makes the Hexmark Destroyer very, very good, I think, especially in combination with this new Lord of Storm ability, this cheaper Lord of Storm. On to the next. So, next up we're playing Tyranids and the Neurothrope. We are going second. And it looks like I'm actually keeping the Locust Lord. I can understand that sometimes going second when you've got one of your legendary cards. And we take the Earthquake. Now, we are playing against Doomraw, friend to the channel. Doomraw, shout out to Doomraw. Don't get to play him too often, but really appreciate all the support. Always enjoy interacting and always comments on the videos and stuff, so quite nice to finally get a game in against him. So, standard opening stuff, really. He drops down the Biovore. Now, kind of interesting, right? This sort of Biovore approach, this Spore approach with Neuro, it always kind of like forces kind of good tempo early on. And it's not easy to get rid of everything, so for now we just clear off the Spore Mine and develop the board. But he hits us with a Gargoyle, plus the ping I'm imagining here, unless he wants to take the damage. Maybe he should actually heal. Yeah, you see, I think I would have actually put the heal on me and put my guy up to 5 health. But that said, it doesn't help him against the Scorpec, so I don't know. So this turn, with the Scorpec, we can finally like turn that tide a little bit. Nice trade for us there, and obviously just get rid of the Spore Mine with Imotekh. Now next turn we can potentially play Divination straight into Immortal Pride, but let's see what we need. Maybe not. Maybe not against the Spore Mine. Let's see. So this feels like a Technomancer turn to me. Yep, down comes the Technomancer. And the damaged Plasma Sight. And then we can play the Divination to set up next turn. And what's kind of cool about this is not only we clear the board, but if you look at the way the mana curve works out, next turn we'll have 6 energy. That means we can play Immortal Pride, and then we can still play our Hero Power for 1 energy. So still getting really good value from Divination Menhir in that sense. Okay, so he hits us with an AoE. So we actually decide to just go ahead and keep the pressure on with a Necron Lord. Fair enough. Interestingly, the Immortal Pride now would mean that the Necron Lord can trade into this and not die. That armor really does make the difference, right? So we can trade there. Now the problem is we will have to take a massive 6 damage, only 5 damage because we've got the armor though, of course. And then we can play Lord of the Storm. And our Locust Lord does have regen 2. So it's going to go back up to 3 with the armor. That's quite nice. Now what's he got to answer? Down comes the Zone Throw. This time he heals. Oh, okay. Of course, right? Because that's what triggers. He needs to trigger Synapse for that to go off. That makes sense. Now, do we use the Res Orb here? I think we do. So we've got the Inescapable, which means that we can just plow both of these into this. And this is a beautiful Res Orb. This is an absolute beautiful Res Orb. And so out comes the Res Orb. And then we can just hit hit with melee damage from Imotekh to only receive 2 damage. And keep our units nice and healthy. Oh, okay. I was just thinking that unit is really bad against this board, right? But he had stealth, so it's not too bad. We're just putting down bangers here. Well, it'll just be a Lord of the Storm and pass, I think. You could use Hyperlogical here, but again, when you're playing a control deck, it's not about always using all your mana every turn. It's about making the best use of your tools. And speaking of which, the big boy comes down and look what's sitting in our hand. Remember we did the deck tech? Do you remember we talked about... What were you thinking when you saw the Methodical in that deck? Because if you were on the side of, yep, that makes total sense, then well done you. And if you weren't, this is precisely why having one copy of them is so important. And in the end, we actually are able to use it to just clear out the Vanguard. Like if we didn't have lethal this turn, obviously we would have used it to clear this guy, the non-emissary. But because we had the lethal, we just killed the Vanguard and took that out. GG. On to the next. Okay, next up we got Gaudy.
I will reshape this galaxy.
Well, not the best hand.
Stop 'em good, lads.
So pretty standard opening stuff. He's beating us down with a big chopper. He's got a discounted vehicle set up for when he wants it, -2. It's probably going to be an E4 squig buggy if we put something down. Down comes the Gretchen mob. This is a really... It's not a very nice use of Skorpekh. It's worse against Gordrang when they do this because the Grots actually have 2 damage and and then you lose half your health. But yeah, it doesn't feel great. Especially when he follows it up with another one, another Gretchen mob. So we go with the Inescapable. Trade those in. Obviously trade with Imotekh. And he goes with the Boss Snob. Interesting. Not sure about that play, to be honest. So what we can do is clear here, and I'm hoping I just drop the Chronomancer. Yeah, I really love this at the end of the turn ability now. So there you go, just resurrects the Tomb Guard. Now he plays no mucking about, and he actually kills the Tomb Guard, so he gets unlucky on the 50-50, but I do think that's a bit of a strange use of no mucking about, to be honest. Bit of an unnecessary gamble. I mean, obviously I'm saying unnecessary, I can't see his hand, so he could just have a terrible hand for all I know. I'm assuming he must have done. But at this stage I'm feeling pretty good. Down comes the Orc Knob. Oh, and there is the killer can. So that discounted vehicle that he set up on first turn, we forgot about, actually uses a flanking killer can. That's a really nice turn 7 combo that he's played there, and that's brought him back into the game. He needed something good. But here we go with the Technomancer. Now, we do have to take a whopping 7 damage to face for this player to work. Obviously, we get 1... We're gaining 2 health this turn from double Lord of Storm. So you could look at it as, you know, only taking 5 damage. But it does enable us to really take the board back. And the explosion does a whopping 3 damage to the Hexmat newly risen Destroyer, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now look at this play. Crump de Git. And the new legendary, which has Bloodthirst and Stomp. So he kills both these units, strikes again. Another great combo. I mean, for Gordrang players out there, you've seen 2 really, really great combos from our opponent in this game. Not ones I see often, to be honest. So I was kind of like, wow, you go. Nice. But again, we can rebuild. A little bit of damage off here with the Hexmat. I mean, maybe we should have just played the Psychomancer. I'm not sure. Like, maybe we could have got more value from this. But I did like the idea that we play it with this, so we get the heal. Now, what does he do here? Does he use the Warbiker? Where does he go with the Warbiker? Okay. So he does go there, and he goes for the kill on Gordrang, meaning that he gets the heal. And again, that trusty hex mark. I do think we've positioned the hex mark wrong here. Like, why would we not put it on the other side of the damaged plasma site? So now we got the buggy into the hex mark. So we're going to kill this first, which does mean we lose our remnants, but we have no way of resurrecting them anyway. So we go Immortal Pride here, which means we're only going to take 2 damage on the Scorpek. Now, depending where the explosion goes on Imotekh. Wow, 3 again, but obviously the armor saved us 1. And then we Lord of the Storm to heal. And so you can see we're just sort of like grinding. This is what I mean by this deck, this Pride Control kind of grind approach to the build. And even with like these heal tools and stuff, you can't really keep up with us. And we just go ahead and Tomb World here. What do we get? Look at that Tomb World, guys. How can you be mad with that? Even though you've got a damaged plasma site, I mean, I'm kind of happy to see the damaged plasma site. And of course, that's GG. Next up, we got Gazgul Mag Uruk Thraka. I don't normally keep Hypological in my opening hand, but I think that having it with Technomancer can be fine, because it's obviously a cheap option for getting reses off. So we're going to clear the Grot and just Lord of Storm to heal. Now then, well, as soon as we see the Shooter Boy, we're like, okay, this is going to be a Gazgul Horde deck that's going to be trying to beat us down. So that clarifies to some extent. Now we do draw the Destroyer, and this is the first game I think on this video where we talked about the Destroyer a lot, so you can see we played Divination Man here. This is an opening that we talked about in the deck tech at the beginning. Go back and listen to that if you missed it. And this sets up a really good game plan for us, sorry. Now this is Ghazghkull, so every time he uses his Warlord power, one of the issues that we have, particularly for melee focused units, is that we are going up against, you know, two power grots, not one power grot. Now it doesn't matter for Obsidian because he's got regeneration. So what we're going to do here is drop our Praetorian, and then we're going to load a Storm. Because we played Divination in here, we can actually play that in the same turn as Praetorian. And so now we are into a really good cadence with our units. But of course, each turn, with this type of Ghazghkull deck, you know, each turn is able to put quite a number of units down that we have to deal with. So I actually think that playing the Technomancer may have been better here. Because I think having the Vanguard was probably a better solution to this board, to be honest, than what we just did. So I don't love that turn. Let me know in the comments what you think. I mean, obviously the line we've taken still works, but I don't think it's as good as if we resurrected the Vanguard. And so what we can do now is play the Chronomancer and then just drop the Extermination Protocol. Now that's a go wide board. Just look at the value that Obsidian of Ophidian is getting for us. And so Ophidian goes back into hiding and regenerates. Here comes Snagger Boy. And Orc Boy. So just constant waves of Orcs is the battle plan. It's quite a bit like an old school aggro Ghazghkull deck in a sense. But obviously with the new cards you can see that this type of build is probably pretty good right now. I mean, I definitely feel without Ophidian we may have got, you know, somewhat overwhelmed in this match, to be honest. So I can see this deck doing work. I think we could have done that the other way around, right? And then this could have traded with the 3-drop, and then this guy would have had one more point of health. But at that point, he kind of gives up. Like, he's thrown like 7 waves at us, and we've been able to control it. So there you go, guys. That is the Pride Control deck. I do think that those games were able to kind of show off a lot of what we talked about in the deck tech. So let me know in the comments if you've got any questions, What do you think to the deck? Any kind of cards that you think are missing, or any tweaks that you would make? I do think there's like a couple of flex slots depending on what you're coming up against, but I do feel like this is it's getting there to being pretty refined. It's definitely a thinker's deck. You know, it's not like a straightforward, you know, play this 3-drop on 3, play this 4-drop on 4. It's not that kind of simple tempo build. It's a control deck, so you know, you've really got to think through not just your current turn but future turns, what your opponents might be playing, what tools you might need, all of that stuff as well. So thanks for all the support. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hit that thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.